Hello, everyone, and welcome to VizConnect, connecting you with the art of data visualization and storytelling. My name is Sagar Kapoor, part of customer success team at Tableau, and VizConnect is your weekly community call which helps you to connect with the art of data visualization and storytelling. We have a YouTube channel and a LinkedIn group. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel and join the group and stay updated with all the latest which is happening on VizConnect. Also, I'm excited about the Tableau conference. The dates are out from 17th to 19th May. Go to the website and keep updated in terms of when the tickets are opening. But this will be an interesting conference, both in person and hybrid. I am excited about you just to see how we can go ahead and connect more members of our community. With that, let me go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. Robert works in Tableau COE at JP Morgan Chase as a user interface designer. He creates website applications and all the design materials for the 1050K plus Tableau users. He previously worked as an analyst for years, but has since switched to design full time. He believes anyone can design and has made it his mission to make analysts better designers. So, without further ado, I will hand it over to Robert to talk about Tableau User Experience Kit. Robert, take it away.
Thank you. Share my screen. Hello, everyone, wherever you are. Tableau UI Kit. So just to set this up before I kind of get into it, I am not affiliated with Tableau or Figma, and this is not associated with JP Morgan Chase. This is simply a side project that I've spent some time past like 6 months creating, and I'll be updating for the immediate future. So before we kind of get into what the Tableau UI Kit is in the first place, we need to talk about prototyping, but we also need to, I got a quick introduction there, but um, here's some quick topics. Who am I? Prototyping, Tableau UI Kit, and then I want most of this to be a demo, right? So I'm going to go through slides fairly quickly, and I want to spend a lot of time going through the actual kit, and feel free to ask questions along the way. If you just put it in the chat, we can discuss. We have a full hour. So whatever questions you may have for Tableau UI Kit specifically, prototyping, design, whatever you want, just throw them in the chat. So who am I? So my name is Robert Janezic. I'm a user interface designer and the Tableau COE at JP Morgan Chase, where I design websites and applications for our 150,000 plus Tableau user base. And it's kind of my role at this point is kind of expanding outside of Tableau as well, right? So I'll be creating all of these applications and websites and things like that for a lot of other teams as well, just in the general business intelligence space. Like it was said, I was previously an analyst for years. Um, I spent a lot of time creating Tableau Public work. You might be familiar with, some of my work on Tableau Public. And I'm generally pretty active in the Tableau community, whether it's on Twitter or LinkedIn. Um, so, like I mentioned, before we can actually get into what the Tableau UI Kit is, we need to introduce prototyping, right? So prototypes are a close replica of what the end result of a product will look like. And, when it comes to Tableau, you can imagine that a close replica is going to be, what your dashboard is going to look like, or your set of dashboards. So imagine you had something like Figma, which is a prototyping tool. You would prototype in prototyping tool, and then you would show it to your key stakeholders and say, hey, this is what it's going to look like. So they have a general idea of what's going on. They incorporate most of the final UI design and interaction that the finished product will have. And I'm going to talk about some benefits of prototyping, because before you can get into something like the Tableau UI Kit, you need to kind of be bought into the idea of prototyping in the first place, right? So here's some main benefits. And these are some of my main benefits specifically for Tableau, right? Like this might be different. The benefits could slightly be different if you're building, an application that, requires dev work with coders, or you're doing a website. But for Tableau specifically, what are the main benefits of prototyping? Um, Avoid tech, right? So this is a big one. So there's no data cleansing, there's no calculations, niche hacks. Niche hacks is a big one, right? Because I mean, I think we see blogs coming out every day with some unique hack to do something. It might require 50 steps, or it could be one step and it's not natively built into um, the platform. So you avoid that, right? So there's no niche hacks, anything server related, and in my opinion, some potentially clunky design functionality that comes along um, with Tableau, right? And that's not necessarily the fault of Tableau, right? Tableau is a data visualization and analytics tool. It's not necessarily specifically a design tool, right? Like Figma or Adobe XD or Sketch or things like that. So in my opinion, better quality. So you can conduct usability testing. You can check that it follows correct design and data viz concepts, things like that. By creating a prototype and showing it to, maybe other devs in the team or your end users, you can talk about, is this the right chart? Are we using best practices? Things like that. You can have those conversations on the front end, and then you can integrate it into your Tableau dashboards. So lower cost. When I say lower cost, I don't necessarily mean just from a dollar standpoint, but lower cost from a time perspective. Um, Iteration at the design level is much less costly and time consuming than it is at the development level. And I actually have a quote on the next slide that kind of reiterates this fact. Um, I've seen time and time again where people, they try to go straight from gathering requirements to actually creating the dashboard, and the design really doesn't come off well. And then they give it to their key stakeholders, and then I'd say like a couple weeks down the line, they want to change things, and it's not like set in stone, things like that. So the time that you might be saving on the front end comes back to bite you in the butt in the long run, right? So in the long run, you're most likely going to be spending more time adjusting things than you would have if you just prototyped it. Um, and that just comes with experience from seeing, I mean, thousands and thousands of dashboards across JP Morgan. I've just seen it time and time again. Feasibility. So this specifically has happened to me before because my previous role, I was working in a consulting company, and we potentially wanted to implement a chart into the dashboard that was a little bit less, straightforward, and we wanted to make sure that we could you know, actually create this in Tableau. So we created a prototype, created what the chart would look like. It was actually a multi-Sankey um, layout, and it actually worked in this scenario, right? And this was before Ken Flairledge had any of his templates. We wanted to make sure that we could actually create this. So created a prototype. I talked to the data engineer who would actually have to create the backend data structure for the multi-level Sankey, and he's really talented, so he was able to do that. But for example, if we just went straight into building the dashboard before we had those conversations, and then we told our client that we could do this, it would not have been great. It's just not a good flow of things, right? You want to make sure you can actually do the things you're going to say before you get into development. So before I mentioned there was a quote kind of associated with the lower cost, and this is one of my favorite design quotes in general. Um, if you think good design is expensive, you should look at the cost of bad design. And people will come to me, especially when the Tableau UI Kit came out. People would tell me they weren't really bought into prototyping because they thought it was mostly a waste of time, right? They didn't see the potential benefits of prototyping. And, for their specific situation, maybe they haven't seen the scenario where it doesn't work, but I have seen hundreds of scenarios where something is poorly designed and not a design is not a focus. And when they go into the end result, something like, um, Tableau, and they just throw some stuff in there and they're not focused on design, they're spending way more time over the long run readjusting things, and it's not as, the quality's not as great and things like that. And this applies to application and website design too, right? So if you just went straight from gathering requirements and giving it to an engineer to build, you're going to be building things over again in a month or two, almost guaranteed. Um, so yeah, just keep this quote in the back of your mind when you're thinking about the Tableau UI kit and whether or not you should be prototyping in the first place. So let's actually jump into the Tableau UI kit now that you understand prototyping. So we actually need to discuss what a UI kit is first, because UI kits are kind of specific to the design community and building applications and websites and things like that. So it's not as prevalent in the Tableau community, just because it's not like Tableau has a UI kit for, it's not like they've built something like this. So a UI kit is a collection of assets that contains a set of design elements such as UI components and styles. And so what is the Tableau UI Kit? It's a UI kit built in Figma that allows users to rapidly prototype Tableau dashboards, and you're able to stick to brand guidelines while building. And that second piece is a really, key feature. So a lot of teams will come to me and say, hey, we're interested in using the Tableau UI kit, but we have all of these brand specific things that we implement into our dashboards. How can I adjust the kit to match what our brand is doing? And I specifically built it in a way that any team, any individual can go into the kit and adjust the styles and components to their own likings so that it fits the way they do things at their company. Um, so what are some main benefits of the Tableau UI kit? So consistency. You can feel at ease knowing that developers will design consistently for all dashboards going forward. And I know this is always an issue, right? So if you have, let's say, a style guide, or if your team has something bigger like a design system, um, it is concerning that some people don't necessarily follow those things all the time. But when you're, prototyping, for example, using the Tableau UI kit, everything is always going to look the same, no matter no matter what. So you can feel confident that when you're going from the prototype to the dev work in Tableau, that it's going to look the same. Customization. So customization is a big one, because you don't want a kit that you just have a very basic bar chart and that's it, right? You have no customization options. You spend more time adjusting that one component in Figma than you would have if you just created it yourself. So I wanted to create a bunch of customization options, one-to-one match with Tableau. So people have come to me and they'll say, we don't want to prototype because we're afraid that it's not going to match the way Tableau is going to look. And that's a real concern, right? Like, I've seen prototypes that people create and it looks nothing like Tableau. So you really don't get a feel of what the prototype or what the dashboard is going to look like. It's not really an issue anymore because, the Tableau UI kit matches everything in Tableau exactly one-to-one. Simplicity, so drag and drop functionality. And this is a big one for Tableau specifically because Tableau is so easy to use, right? Drag and drop functionality. They talk about that all the time in, sales meetings and things. So I wanted to make sure that it's just easy to, drag your component in. What do I want? I want a bar chart, for example, drag it in, make some changes, as easy as that. So I'm going to throw some stats at you. This might not mean a lot if you're not familiar with Figma, but I'll show you that these numbers are a lot, right? So 1,100 plus components and variants, which basically equates to this is a ton of customization options. 1,000 plus styles, so you can feel confident that even if you don't have a brand guideline, you can choose from 1,000 plus different styles. And maybe you can even build your brand guideline off of the styles that are here, right? I created a Tableau UI kit with a really clean set of default styles that I think could work for 99% of companies, unless you want to go more specific to your specific company. If you just want to create really great dashboards and prototypes, you can just use the default styles that I'm using. 2,200 plus dashboard layouts. I wanted to make sure there was enough options because I know there's no possible way for me to create every single dashboard layout that a team or an individual could ever want. But I definitely did my best. And, this is something that I'll be working on, in the future, right? So this could easily go up to 5,000 to 10,000 layouts, basically giving anyone infinite amount of options to do a dashboard layout. So let's jump to a demo. Let's jump over to this tab here. So when you download the Tableau UI Kit, this is what you're going to see. This is Figma. You're looking at Figma now, which is a prototyping, interactive, and collaborative prototyping tool. And at this point, Figma is by far and away the most popular prototyping tool. I mentioned some other ones like XD and Sketch earlier. Sketch is Mac only. And then XD is also a prototyping tool by Adobe. But Figma, if you just go to 2021 Designer Survey, which I suggest people do because it'll actually show you a survey over 1,000 designers from a lot of different companies about what prototyping tools people are using for what scenarios, and Figma by far and away is the most popular. So the structure of Figma is similar to Tableau in a way. On the left here, we have pages. So, we have welcome here, which is just, who am I? What is this about? Why did I do this? Getting started, which is important if you just need a base understanding of some of the things that are going on, like what is a UI kit? I get into atomic design, which I'm not going to go into here, but atomic design, I strongly suggest people look into it because it could apply and help you think about creating dashboards in a different way. Essentially, it's the concept of thinking of a user interface in smaller and smaller components. And it's the idea of taking small components, combining them together to create a larger component. So that might seem weird in the Tableau world, but in the design world, atomic design is everywhere. Pretty much every design system, whatever company you're at, if they have a design system, I can pretty much guarantee they're using atomic design concepts. So what is a component? I'm not going to go into super deep about what components and variants are because it's not necessarily a Figma. It's not a Figma crash course, but I'll quickly go through it, right? So components are elements you can reuse across your designs. So think of the bar chart component that I created. You can just drag and drop it in. It's just reusable, right? What's a variant? A variant is a variant of that component, right? So you have a bar chart, and then you have different options to customize that component. Think of it that way. Styles are just the different, colors and typography that you use that you want. Let's say, for example, your company has specific colors and fonts that you want to use. You can create styles in Figma so that whenever you're designing things, you always use the specific styles that you want, and you're not just randomly creating colors and different typographies and things like that. I have how-to videos, so I've created 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can't count, 6 different videos that you can look into, and it talks about file navigation, using components, using variants, How do I build dashboards, icons and styles. So you can watch those videos if you're confused on anything. And if you're confused on anything, you can always just reach out to me and I'll give my information at the end. Styles. So a big thing with the Tableau UI Kit is I want to make sure people are documenting the styles that their team and their company are using, right? So I know specific teams have very particular ways they want their axes to be, for example. So here you can see for the Tableau UI Kit, I have different colors and typographies for each set of the axis, for example. So the axis title, what are the tick text colors, what's the tick color, what's the axis ruler shading. You can see that it gets very particular, right? But if you want consistency for your team across the organization, this is how granular you have to be. Imagine, because the way that I think about it, imagine you're a developer and you create a bar chart and your style guide gets fairly deep, but it's not super deep. Whatever the developer is going to spend way more time thinking about the little things than they should when they should be focusing on the actionable insights they're trying to get out of their dashboards. They shouldn't be focused on every single little design element because they might not be designers, they might be analysts, right? But if you tell them, hey, the tick is this color, it helps them out, right? So they don't have to sit there looking at the dialog box thinking, maybe I should go to a different dashboard on the Tableau server and see what they've done. And then I download the dashboard and then I figure out what color they're using. So this really helps developers in, the little things. And I think over the little things add up over time, right? It just gets you time back. So you can see it gets granular for all these different things like parameters, filters, highlighters, legends. It goes pretty in depth. So this is kind of like a reference page for developers to say, hey, these are all the colors and typography styles we have for our dashboards. Palettes, these are all the palettes that you can look through. And like I mentioned earlier, that your team or your company might not have styles or branding that you use, right? You might just be doing whatever. And you could use these as inspiration for potentially creating your own, right? So we have all of the Tableau styles here on the left. And then we have some more here. So Color Brewer, they use a lot for maps. You can use these. Tailwind, which I strongly urge people, if you do not have colors, I strongly urge you to look into the Tailwind color palettes. So Tailwind is a front end CSS framework, and it's one of the most popular and modern right now for creating applications. And they have super talented designers creating things. So if you don't have like brands and you don't know what colors to use for like primary and secondary and warnings and errors and things like that, look into the Tailwind palettes. Veridis, and they use Veridis as a lot of the times they use these for maps. So you have a ton of different styles here that you can look into if you're not sure where to go. We have examples. So these are just examples that I quickly created using the Tableau UI Kit. You can see that they look like Tableau, which is good. And they were all created quickly, which is a main selling point of the UI Kit. I'll skip Scratchpad because it's just an empty page for practice or whatever you're doing. So this is where we actually get into the components of the Tableau UI Kit. And earlier I mentioned that components are reusable. So atoms in the atomic design world are the smallest, just like in atomic design, atoms are the smallest component, right? So you can think of atoms as I'm taking a component and I'm combining them together to create something larger. So the reason that these are atoms is because these components are used across a lot of other components. So an axis, for example, you're going to have one almost on every chart, right? Unless it's like a map or a pie chart or something like that, you're basically going to have an axis always, or a label, right? A label can apply to any component, any chart. We have change, we have titles, so a title applies to every title or every chart that you're creating. And then we have columns and cells, and these just apply to like tables and the actual like dimension axes. And so this is where we get into the actual charts. So we have line charts, bar charts, pie charts, scatter, table, and then KPI. You'll notice that this is not every single chart under the sun, right? So I don't think I would have ever put out Tableau UI Kit if I had to design every single chart on the front end. But I created the ones that I thought were most important that applied to 95% of business cases. And let's be honest, most business dashboards are scatter plots, line charts, and bar charts. And you'll, potentially do a pie chart if you have 2 sections to 3 sections, right? So, these charts apply to most of the business dashboards that people are creating. We have same thing, atoms for user interfaces. So these are the Tableau user interfaces, and these are things like filters, right? So what I actually did for these is I went into Tableau and I took screenshots of every single different Tableau user interface. So single value list, drop down, slider list, multi-value drop down, wildcard. We have measures, we have dates, range of dates, starts. So you can see everything looks exactly one-to-one like Tableau, which is big and it took me a long time, but it's totally worth it. Um, Parameters. So you want a parameter on your dashboard, here you go. We have tooltips, and then we have others. So, highlighter, legends, legend, dimension measure, we have pages, things like that. This last section is dashboard related. So we actually have the dashboard components, and I'm not going to talk about this a ton right now because it probably looks confusing to you. Just know this is your dashboard component, and these are the things that go into it. We have a footer, and I asked the community kind of what sections of the dashboard they use the most. And I think footer, paragraph, and title kind of applied to most of the dashboard things people were creating. And then also a lot of the times people have KPI and filter stacks, and this is just the name that I gave it. So they have like a stack of filters, a stack of KPIs, and then some sort of combination of both, right? And then at the end, we just have icons, which I'll show you how to use the Tableau UI Kit icons. And these are actually the material design icons. So it's really nice having the material design icons to quickly switch out things if your brand or your company don't have specific icons they use, right? Material design is the Google icons. And those are great because Google is huge, first of all, and they want to create icons that are applicable across the entire world for all of their for all of the different um, applications they build. So you can kind of be sure that these icons that you're using are going to be pretty obvious to people because they use Google all the time. We have changelog, which is, whenever I create something new, make new updates to it, I'll put the updates here, the date that it happened, and what the updates are. And then license agreements, and then we have the cover. So let's actually get into building something using the Tableau UI Kit. So if I jump to Scratchpad, so for this example, imagine you're a developer and a stakeholder or a manager comes to you saying, hey, I want you to start creating a dashboard for so-and-so, for example. And let's say you already have requirements or whatever. And you actually need to start creating the prototype. Now, before I go into actually building the dashboard, I want to show you how you would just create a chart, right? How would you create a chart in a simple way with customization using the Tableau UI Kit? So what you would do is you go to the top left here, you would go to Assets, and you can see that everything is organized exactly the same way that the pages are, right? So atoms, atoms, line chart, bar chart, line chart, bar chart, and it's pretty easy in that way, right? So it matches the pages. So for this example, I want to create a bar chart. So I could go to bar chart. You can see that there's annotations. I've added those in so you know exactly what you're dragging in. You can drag it in and you get a nicely laid out bar chart. And this looks pretty good, right? You might say this is fine, but you want to do some more customization options. And this is kind of where the variants come into play. You know, I mentioned earlier that a component, this bar chart component, can have different options to change the component. So a good way of articulating that is for this component, I have two variants for title on and title off. Title on, title off. And if I go back to the bar chart component, you can see that there's two variants, one for title on and one for title off. And you'll notice when I go back to Scratchpad, this is exactly what you see here. And you can see the power that comes into this, right? You can create as many components and variants as you want to create as much customization as you want. So for this example, I want a title on, but I also want it bigger, right? So a big piece that people tend to tell me is, you know, we're nervous that the time it's going to take to create something, we're not as concerned with that, but we're more concerned that if we have to make changes, then we're spending additional time making changes. So let's say, for example, you showed this prototype to someone. If you were doing it the old way, which is, just doing it very manual, and someone came back to you with iterative feedback saying, hey, can you add a few more bars on? Can you make it 100 pixels wider? And yes, you can do that, and you'll have to do it manually, right? So the old way is doing something like this, where you just like do this, and then, you drag it over, and then, you do something like that, and then like you do that, and then you have to add in the title, the label for each, and then someone can come along and say, hey, you actually have to add more. And so it's just a lot of manual work, especially when you're doing iterative feedback like that. It's difficult, right? So the big thing that I wanted to make sure Tableau UI Kit had was the ability to easily adjust things based off of feedback, right? So if you wanted to make it wider, you can make it wider. Everything scales properly. If you wanted to make it taller, it scales properly, right? So you don't have to adjust it simply based on, manual type stuff. You can make it as large or small as possible. And another piece is, what if I wanted to add more bars, right? Normally you would have to go in, create the rectangles or whatever you're doing, and then you have to adjust the size and you have to figure out all of these different manual things. Or you could just go into the bars section and unhide two of them and it automatically scales properly, right? So it's less about Figma, which a lot of people in the community aren't super familiar with Figma, and it's more about understanding how to use the Tableau UI Kit to your advantage. And you can obviously get as advanced as you want with Figma, right? But that's not the purpose of the Tableau UI Kit. The Tableau UI Kit is for analysts who aren't super familiar with Figma to be able to use it properly and have a really great user experience while doing it. If I created the Tableau UI Kit and it was just an absolute nightmare to work with, no one would use it, right? Like if I go to a website and everything takes forever to load, and you can actually look up this, like the stats on websites and things, user experience is a major and major thing. Load times for pages, the design, if a website's not designed well, users tend to just click away from it, right? They can see poorly designed websites quickly. And the same thing goes with Tableau dashboards. A user can tell a poorly designed Tableau dashboard instantly. And people often say, why aren't people using my dashboard? And often the answer is like, we're not getting the actionable, we're not answering the right questions, and that's part of it. But from what I've seen, having seen thousands and thousands of different dashboards, design and user experience is one of, if not the most important instant thing people notice on Tableau dashboards or websites or applications. So that's just my little spiel on just design in general, and how important it is for Tableau or really anything. Um, so back to this specific component. So let's start adjusting it, right? So for this specific example, how do I want it to look? Do I want it to be horizontal? Do I want it to be vertical? For this example, I'll just keep it horizontal. Do I want a dimension axis? If I go back to horizontal, do I want a dimension axis? Do I want a measure axis? For this specific example, I'll just do measure for now. And then also from here, I don't like that there's only 5 ticks. You know, I want more. So you can actually go into the axis and say, oh, I want 13 axis labels, and this could just be profit. And you can change things there. And so you can see you can keep it as X if you want, right? Like you don't have to change it. But if you want to make it super similar to Tableau, you can change all of these numbers to whatever scale you want. So from here, let's make some more changes. So I want to just show the label for the min and max to, just give some contrast. And I also want to color only the min and max. So how would I do that? So the easiest way to do that is just get rid of all of the labels and then go into the specific bars that you want and say, I want right label. So instantly you get min and max. And then now you need to change the colors for everything other than min and max, right? So min and max are good, but if I just hold Control and Shift, you can go into each of these and change the style. You can see that the palette I'm using here is Tailwind Blue 5. And the 5 just blue is obviously blue. 5 is just the amount of contrast it has, right? So it's basically just darker to lighter. But for this example, I just want a light gray. Oh, I actually did one too many. Light gray. Cool. So now we have a bar chart with min and max colored and labels. And so really you can see you can get as customized as you want. You can change the specific labels. Let's say for the min and max, you want to say what's min and what's max. So you could actually go into the label and you'll notice that when I go into the specific label for the bar, you're going to see a lot of options for that as well. Do I want the helper to be right? Yes, I do. And do I want a helper? Yes. And this is min. Go into here. And this is max. So you can see that you can change the labels as well for the specific things. You're not stuck to just one thing. And I really encourage whoever uses the Tableau UI Kit to look at all the components that are available so you know the full breadth of things. So that's one chart. So let's quickly create another one. So let's create a scatter plot. So if I go to Assets, Scatter Plot, drag this in, we get a nice scatter plot. And the same thing applies, right? Do I want a title? No. What labels do I want? I don't want an x-axis. And then what type of, do I want to size my dots? I go into here. Yes, I do. And you get a nice scatter plot. So you're probably asking, all right, I'm overseeing specific chart examples. I want to see how to create a dashboard. And there's a lot of different ways. There's 3 ways to create dashboards, and you can watch that in the video. But for my example, I'm going to create a dashboard in the most basic way. So if I go to Assets, Dashboard, drag in the dashboard component, you'll notice that you get a nice laid out dashboard. For this example, I want a title, I want a footer, and I want a KPI filter section. And you'll notice that you have different options about where it's going to be, right? Left, right, top, none. I'll keep it left, but I want this to be a little bit more complex, right? So let's say, for example, you're building a set of dashboards and this is your second dashboard that you drill into, right? So you have the options in the title section for a lot of different things, right? So you have breadcrumbs, you have logo, You can have metadata information. You can have actions. For this example, I just want the breadcrumb, right? So I can go in here, hide these. This could be home. This could be profit. This is the profit dashboard. This is something, I don't know, whatever you want to put for, I don't know what everyone's subtitle methodology is, but I don't want all these filters. I only want like 3 filters. So I can go into the actual section, click the ones I don't want, and then I can hide these. And then let's say for the second one, I know a specific filter that's going to be there, and I want to show what the dropdown is going to look like. What are some of the options? So I can name this region. Actually, let me go back, but I actually want to change the if there's a dropdown or not. So I can click the dropdown option here, and you can see a dropdown appears. So this could be region. This could be north, south, east. Now your key stakeholders have a good indication of not only what a Tableau, dropdown looks like, but what are some of the options that are going to be there. Now we actually need to start populating some content. And you might be asking, all right, well, there's nothing here. It's just one thing. How do I actually switch it to a layout that I want, right? So this is where the dashboard components come into play. And you notice I had mentioned earlier that we weren't going to go into it, but now we are, right? So these are all the different options for dashboard, the specific content layout. So for this example, I want to choose a layout that has 4 options because I want 4 charts. So this one looks pretty good. This variant is called random 23. So these are randomly generated. These are columns. These are rows. So this is random 23. Now let's see what happens when I go back to Scratchpad and I change the layout to random 23. You get the exact layout of what you saw in the dashboard page component. So now you're asking, all right, well, how do I populate these? Normally you would probably say, all right, well, you just take this and drag it into this. Well, that's not really how it works, right? Just based off of more advanced things like auto layout. For this example, what you need to actually do is you can just hold Control, and then you can just go to replace me. I'm saying replace me because it's saying, hey, take this thing and change it to something else. And for this example, I just want a scatter plot. Change that to scatter plot. I don't want a title. And for these, I want 3 bar charts. Bar charts. Get rid of titles. And then you can just customize it exactly the same as you did here, right? So I can go into a specific bar chart and say, I don't want, a measure axis. I don't want these things, right? So you can customize it in exactly the same way. And you'll notice that it fits the exact structure. If I move away from that, it fits the exact same structure of the dashboard. Now, a real advantage, like I mentioned earlier, is the ability to change the dashboard size, right? So everything is, you can make it as large or small as possible, and you can see that everything scales to fit properly for the section that it's put into, and that's a major advantage. The KPI section doesn't change, the title doesn't move, it's just the content, and that's the same functionality that basically you would want with Tableau, right? You don't want your title to be huge, right? If you make a dashboard bigger, you want it to scale properly. So I mentioned icons earlier. So people mentioned that they use footers for, informational type stuff. So this could be last refreshed, and I want a good icon, right? I want a good icon that, signifies a refresh. So I can go to image, switch it out for, I think there's one for timer. Yep, there is. And just like that, you get a last refresh with a cool, material design icon. And you can see I quickly built that and it looks like Tableau. And then obviously you can get as customized as you want, right? This is just a brief example. Um, so that's pretty much it for demoing like dashboards and charts. But I think I need to explain styles quickly and how to quickly adjust that to your brand guideline. So people have said, hey, we do filters in a specific way, right? So our titles for all of our filters are a specific color or specific size. Um, so let me quickly show you how you could change all of your filters with one change of a style, right? So let's see, what is the style of this single value list title? It is Tableau user interface, filters, and then the color is title, right? So what I would do is I would go to the style, minimize these, Tableau user interfaces, filters, title. Now, let's say, for example, your team has red titles for some reason, but you want all of your filters to be red. So you would go to title, change the color, and you can watch what happens when I change the color for the title. Oh, that's a bad example because it's not bright enough. I change it to like that. You can see that all of the filter titles change. Now, this is important because you're adjusting the base components now. And so let's say, for example, you go back to Scratchpad and you drag in a filter. I go to filters and I drag in a date filter, for example, it's going to have that red title now. So you can see how this works, right? You adjust the styles to your liking and it propagates through all of the components so that when you're building dashboards, you can see that it already changed. You're building dashboards and the styles apply. So that's kind of the power of Figma and design systems and having functionality that can apply across, components and things like that. So I think I do want some time for questions. So I think we have about 13 minutes here. So if there's any questions, I will go to this quickly. Go to the next one. Oh, I guess I forgot to add that to the. So if you're interested in the Tableau UI Kit, you can visit tableauuikit.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter, which is at Robert Janezic. And you can also email me as well if you have questions or anything like that. You can email me at rjanezic2@gmail.com. So that's all I have for now. So are there any questions?
Hey, Robert, thanks a lot for sharing the UI kit. I think it's impressive and at the same time innovative and creative how we can go ahead and create these guides for our users in the organization. So
Yep.
thank you for sharing that. So I think there is one question from Yogesh, and he is asking it can be only used to create prototype, or we can create Tableau dashboard UI UX. In what way it can be used? So I think he's trying to connect how he can go ahead and use it in Tableau.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been thinking about that a lot, right? So I've been thinking about how do I take the things that people have designed in Figma and potentially auto-generate things into Tableau, right? So Figma design tool, use design tool for design, use an analytics and data visualization tool for analytics and data visualization. So as of now, there's no like automated way to just take the design in Figma and just one button just create something in Tableau. But they're really, even in like the website and application design world, there's really nothing for that either, right? So usually the way it works in, my day-to-day or at large companies, there's UX teams and their designers, right? So for example, what I do for work is I design the websites and applications, and then I hand the designs off to the engineers. So the engineers will then create it. But in the Tableau world, in most teams, I'm guessing there's not UX people. So what I'm assuming, people are doing is they're going to create the prototypes in Figma using the Tableau UI Kit, and then they're going to go into Tableau and just try to match it one to one, right? And that's kind of the goal. If you're a larger team, you might have people, if the Tableau UI Kit, propagates through different teams, teams might say, hey, we actually just want a designer, right? And then we want developers, Tableau people, Tableau developers, creating and matching it one to one. And that's actually what I did at my previous role, right? So like Joshua Smith, who's my mentor, and we worked together. He would, create some of the prototypes, and then I was, really good at using Tableau and matching it one to one. So he would give me the prototype, and I would take the prototype and just basically put it one to one in Tableau and match it exactly. So as of now, if you're able to do both, great. If you have separate people, great. Um, but to answer your question, there's no super automated way to do it. But I am thinking about that for sure.
Thank you, Robert. And I was just thinking about it. I think it can be used in a great way for creating style guides for the organization.
Yep.
And this is something all the organizations are talking about to me also. So if an organization wants to create a style guide, I think this tool is beautiful in terms of just going ahead, creating it and sharing with everyone in the organization, right? In terms of this is the way you can have your style guides and assets which we can use in Tableau.
Yeah. And to even go deeper than that, right? So I'm trying to think about what V3 or V4 of the Tableau UI kit could look like, right?
Mhm.
So in the design world, generally, there's UI kits, which are just like the styles and components, but then a design system is different, right? It's styles and components, right, which is one piece of it. But then you have documentation and information of saying, how do you use the components and the styles? And that's what a design system is. And those are two separate things, right? This is not a design system. I'm not
Yep.
saying how to use the styles and components. I'm simply just giving you the styles and components. But I am thinking about, can I create something that the Tableau UI kit becomes the Tableau design system, right? Where you have components and styles, but you also have potential, best practices for data visualization. And you also have design concepts, and all developers will go to their Tableau design system and be able to get all of their information for their team. And Tableau, Figma is really great for documentation, and keeping all of your styles and components and just doing a bunch of stuff. So I am thinking about that more for sure. But as of now, it's just a UI kit. Um, yep.
Perfect. Thank you, Robert. And even I think one thing, just one last point from my end, I think it will be great for prototyping when you're talking to your stakeholders. And I will give you my example. Sometimes I have to do that using pen or paper or using Tableau, right? I think the UI kit will help me in terms of just going ahead and designing and sharing a quick prototype with them, right? In terms of what can be the expected result in Tableau once they see it.
Yeah, and I think the Tableau UI kit came out at a good time because I would potentially say that wireframing, which is just general layouts, people used to do it on pen and paper, right? And that was applicable because everyone was in office and you could show your team what was going on. But now people are everywhere, right? There's remote work. You can't do pen and paper and then like try and put it to the camera and you know what I mean? It's hard to do it physically now. So you need something like the Tableau UI kit or a prototyping tool that you can collaboratively share prototypes and designs over the internet, right? Like you can't just do pen and paper anymore. So I think there's a lot of things to be said about prototyping, right? So something that I will say is I don't think you should prototype every single dashboard ever, right? Are you building a dashboard that is like just a table for yourself or like for one other person? No, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you should prototype that. Are you creating a dashboard with multiple pages that's going to be seen by hundreds or thousands of people that has a lot of, views from higher ups? Then absolutely you should spend time prototyping and making sure the design is as good as possible, right? It's really a scale. So the scale is like to the far left is a table. To the far right is like 15 dashboards that you're creating. So the two areas, I would say like somewhere in the middle to the left, right? So like anything from like here on, you don't need to prototype always, but for those larger projects, you definitely should be prototyping. And I'm also aware that like this concept of using a prototyping tool is fairly new, and especially like a UI kit is very new for the Tableau community, and I'm very aware that there's hesitant people, right? That, like they don't understand the concept, or they don't think they have to use it. But I think it's just progression, right? Like I do see in a couple years, most people will be prototyping their dashboards because there's going to be tools like the UI kit that make it a lot easier, right? Um, so I think this idea of design and prototyping things, it's just going to get bigger, in my opinion. Kind of, it just always progresses, right? Like things can't just stay exactly the same always, right? So that's just how things go. So I'm excited. I really appreciate anyone that decides to use it, and I'm always here, if you want to reach out and you have questions or feedback. Feedback's a big one, right? So I always reach out whoever decides to use it. I always message them saying, "Hey, really appreciate it. Just reach out if you have questions." Um, so yeah, that's it from my side.
Yep. And just one last question, Robert. If you want to talk about the licensing, I think some of the
Yeah, I could.
participants are talking
Yeah, I
about.
could.
Yeah.
I could just go to the website. So this is the Tableau UI Kit website. You got your marketing spiel, your whole thing here, really trying to jazz it up. Um, so if we go to licensing, so there's individual, team, and then enterprise. So if you're an individual and it's just you that'll be using the kit, then that's perfect for you. If you're a team with less than three, um, up to three Figma editors, then you would get team. An enterprise, if you just want no cap on editors and you um, you're really buying into the UI kit and prototyping, then you would get the enterprise version. And all of these are a one-time purchase, right? So you just purchase it once and that's it. And people have said, come to me and say, hey, can I do individual and then upgrade uh, to team? I would say, yes, you can do that, but I would also say that I'm extremely confident that you're gonna upgrade to team, right? So I would just say potentially do team. And there's all these FAQs as well, right? So I try to explain some of these things, and I'm using Gumroad, which is a very reputable and popular site where you can, sell files and things like that. So the way it works is you would buy this, and then it gives you an option to download, and it's in your Gumroad file. And then I'm always making updates to this. Like this isn't a one and done thing. I'll be creating new updates all the time. And basically, you would purchase it, download it, and then just, drag it into Figma, and then you have it. And then whenever I make new updates, I send emails to all the people that purchased it and say, hey, there's a new update available. You can go to your Gumroad profile and download the new update. Um, so feel free to go to the site, look at the FAQs. ask me questions through email, etc. And then if you want to preview in Figma, like the full thing, with no restrictions, you can preview in Figma and you can just look at it. You can't like, I can because, I created it, but you couldn't necessarily for, you, for example, go in here and be able to like copy and paste anything. It's basically just for viewing. So if you're interested in the full kit, you can just go there. So yeah, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out.
Perfect. I think with that, thanks a lot, Robert, for sharing the Tableau UI kit. I think it's a creative and an innovative way how you can go ahead and keep design at the forefront when you're going ahead and designing dashboards in Tableau. So
Yep,
thanks a lot for that.
absolutely. Okay. Yeah,
And
have a good one.
perfect.
Thanks
With
everyone.
that, thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.